in the parking lot that the door looks like it's come unlatched and there's a puppy that maybe escaped and is running around the parking lot. So if that sounds like a familiar situation to anybody, you might want to go check on the track.
This is the Ketchikan team.
Salmon from Ketchikan High School.
Good afternoon. My name is Talissa, and in presenting order, we have Anne, Katie, Laura, and Tyler. Together we make up the Saber-tooth salmon, and we'd like to discuss environmental resilience in Bristol Bay sockeye salmon and the portfolio effect. Before we begin, we'd like to share our central question with everyone. How are Bristol Bay region sockeye salmon so resilient through the pressures of their changing environments? During the remainder of our presentation, we'd like you to keep the question in the back of your mind as we have during our research and writing. In the next few minutes, our team will delve into the significance of the Bristol Bay sockeye salmon and the portfolio effect, how it has aided sockeye salmon resilience, as well as why it is important that fishery management should aim to preserve it while maintaining a minimal presence. To hit this point, we will be comparing management of Bristol Bay to that of the Sacramento River. Now, Anne will dive into why the Bristol Bay region is important to salmon, along with how salmon impacts their surroundings.
Thank you, Talissa. To understand the importance these stocks of sockeye salmon hold, we must first understand the Bristol Bay region and the fish's social and economic importance. Bristol Bay is a region located in the southwest of Alaska. This region supports roughly 9,000 year-long residents across 26 communities. The bay itself is fed by 9 major river systems, as well as numerous freshwater lakes and shallow estuaries. These bodies of water possess diversity in things like temperature, pH, and discharge. This high variance in biocomplexity aids in the survival of organisms. This environment plays an important role in supporting the largest sockeye salmon fishery in the world. The sockeye salmon runs have a pronounced social effect on the Bristol Bay region. The Bristol Bay village of Ketchikan is a prime example of the fish's impact. The village, which is located on the southwest part of Lake Iliamna, has the highest collection of salmon per capita in comparison to villages located in the Gulf of Alaska and Cook Inlet. In 2005, salmon made up 74% of total harvested wild food by weight. Sockeye salmon make up 90% of all subsistence salmon harvested from the region. Sockeye salmon also hold a great importance to the indigenous communities of Bristol Bay. The Bristol Bay Native Corporation, or BBNC, emphasizes this cultural significance of the fish. They describe it as being at the heart of our subsistence culture. The BBNC uses a school of salmon as their corporate logo as a part of their Fish First philosophy, which states that fish are not only a source of subsistence, but also inspiration. In 2018, this sockeye salmon fishery was considered to be the most valuable fishery managed by the state of Alaska in terms of commercial dollars. In 2019, sockeye salmon dominated the inshore commercial harvest of Bristol Bay, totaling 41.9 million fish. These salmon runs provide roughly 14,000 seasonal jobs and bring in an annual income of over $280 million. In smaller villages like Ketchikan, upwards of 45% of households participate in the commercial salmon fishing industry. Next, Katie will tell you about what makes these fish so resilient.
Thank you, Anne. Throughout the past 130 years of commercial salmon harvest history in Bristol Bay, sockeye salmon have shown to be resilient to adversity, such as changes in sea surface temperature, ocean acidification, and resource exploitation. The main reason these sockeye salmon are so resilient is due to the portfolio effect. The portfolio effect is how organisms and ecosystems achieve stability in their dynamics, despite inherent volatility in their components. Bristol Bay has a very strong portfolio due to the 9 major rivers and the different ecosystems they each have. As shown in the figure behind me, by 1993, sockeye salmon catch had branched out to the 5 major rivers represented in this graph. It is important to have high diversity to keep sockeye salmon in that region from dying out. To help demonstrate the portfolio effect, we can view the return of sockeye salmon to Bristol Bay at different scales, such as geographic, through life history, and genetics. The first graph is only showing the geographic scale of Bristol Bay, which can give us a broad overview on how well the whole system is doing, while the third graph shows a smaller scale through the streams and gives a more accurate picture on how productive the system is doing. This method is used to provide a more accurate picture for future predictions of salmon return. The fourth graph shows an eroded portfolio with respect to only one age class returning and is 2.2 times more variable with respect to the abundance of returning sockeye salmon, making it harder to accomplish estimating future salmon returns. If there was a problem in one of the rivers, such as an increase in river temperature that could cause a decline in returning sockeye salmon to that river, there are 8 other rivers that could have a great salmon return. There could also be a problem if there were low levels of dissolved oxygen, which could lead to oxidative stress, later leading to suffocation, causing a major die-off. There are other aspects of the portfolio on the left. As presented in the figure behind me, if Bristol Bay had an eroded portfolio, which is the graph on the bottom, there would be 10 times more fishery closures. However, if we consider the portfolio, which is the graph on the top, there are only 4 fishery closures, which benefits the communities that rely on the Bristol Bay catch. Climate change has also caused an increase in CO2 in the Bering Sea and some of the major streams located in Bristol Bay. Not only has there been an increase in CO2, but in sea surface temperatures as well by 0.072 degrees Celsius per decade, causing stressful conditions for the sockeye salmon. Genetics are also important in the portfolio effect. Displayed behind me, Bristol Bay is very diverse, which keeps their portfolio intact. Some sockeye salmon in one of Bristol Bay's rivers may have different genetic advantages than sockeye salmon in another river. With genetic diversity in sockeye salmon, there's a higher chance of adaptation to warming environments. For example, Bristol Bay sockeye salmon are beginning to skip a year in freshwater due to an increase in sea surface temperature. With all these stressful changes to sockeye salmon habitat, Laura is now going to explain how we can maintain their portfolio.
Thank you, Katie. Fishery management is important to ensure the portfolio effect is preserved. The numbers of returning salmon are significant in ensuring a stable, robust population. There are daily counts of fish to compare to historical averages to see if the runs are on the right track. This means that there must be a certain amount of fish to return by a certain amount of time to be considered normal. The Department of Fish and Game implements selective closures to help maintain the Bristol Bay sockeye salmon population year by year. This is a timeline of the Bristol Bay data collection. First, managers review past data to get a rough estimate of how many fish should be returning to each river. The Port Muller test fishery also provides helpful insight. I will go more in depth about this resource later. Managers also look at commercial data. Processors keep useful data about how many fish are returning, or caught commercially. And finally, fish counting towers, as shown here, show how many fish successfully return to their respective rivers. With all of this data from past years and numbers from current runs, selective closures help the stability of Bristol Bay's rivers by ensuring the current generation's genes are passed on. The Port Muller test fishery in the Bering Sea is a great resource for current data. The test fishery sends DNA samples to an Anchorage lab to determine where the fish are from, thus giving us an estimate of how many fish are going to each river. These are the goal ranges for all the rivers in Bristol Bay. The goal ranges are different in each river because of their different carrying capacities. If the data shows the returns of sockeye salmon are significantly lower than usual, the managers at the Department of Fish and Game will close a specific fishery or potentially the entire Bristol Bay fishery. If the data shows the returns are higher than usual or on the right track, the managers will allow the fishery to stay open. The management of Bristol Bay fisheries through past and current data helps allow the portfolio to stay large and diverse. Next will be Tyler to discuss an area we chose to compare to Bristol Bay to highlight the importance of the portfolio effect.
Thank you, Laura. To reiterate what my teammates have said, the geographic portfolio of Bristol Bay has allowed its sockeye fishery to remain resilient against growing economic yield and environmental adversity. Its 6 watersheds allow it to house multiple salmon stocks that overlap or remain independent, which adds another layer to its genetic diversity. While Bristol Bay is unique in its geographical components, it is also unique in the attributes of its communities. Despite housing an economic powerhouse of the region, Bristol Bay only has a population of about 9,000, which is spread across 26 villages. This lack of anthropogenic activity has left the area relatively pristine, with less pollution or construction, which would interfere with salmon habitats. These unique attributes, combined with management aimed at maintaining a broad portfolio, have allowed the sockeye salmon fishery of Bristol Bay to prosper, maximizing biocomplexity, biomass, and biological yield. However, when analyzing the results of management practice, it is important to make comparisons to create context. For the purposes of our research, we compared the management of a river system with very different characteristics to Bristol Bay, the Sacramento-San Joaquin River Delta. This river system had historically held fairly successful Chinook salmon runs averaging over 100,000 annually. Located in Northern California, the area consists of only a single watershed emptying into the San Francisco Bay, which already contributes to a smaller geographic portfolio than Bristol Bay. In contrast to the smaller Bristol Bay communities, 3 major cities, Stockton, Sacramento, and San Francisco, border it. These developments display an increase in pollution and infrastructure that could degrade the ecosystem, thus hindering the environment's sustainability. With a less diverse portfolio, the Chinook would seemingly be much more susceptible to environmental change. Further asserting the detrimental effects of this infrastructure, the figure shown displays all dams and stream gauges along the Sacramento River's tributaries. These developments have served as an obstacle to the winter run of Chinook salmon that had historically spawned at higher elevations. Escaped numbers above 20,000 in 2006 have fallen to a mere 2,000 in 2018. The dams have eroded a branch of the geographical portfolio as well as a genetic one from the Sacramento River's salmon run. Factors like these, which have steadily degraded the freshwater environment, have led to a highly susceptible Chinook salmon population which crashed in 2008. This graph of the winter Chinook run shows a harsh dip in escaping in the year 2008 after many successful returns. Well, as we've established that with a strong portfolio, this wouldn't be a concern. This decline was observed across every seasonal run within a 2-year range. It's even more pronounced in the top right fall Chinook run. The dip in escapement shown in these graphs was likely caused by a less productive ocean year, yet the salmon population would have been much more secure had the portfolio been better managed. Despite this failure, California's Department of Fish and Wildlife has made efforts to rebuild the geographic portfolio. Over $700 million have been allocated to restoration efforts through 2014. These images show one ecosystem restoration project in Battle Creek, a river that had previously been blocked off by dams. Completed in 2015, the project reconstructed dams and fish ladders to better sustain salmon runs. While the completion of the project is recent, there is already a slight positive trend in escapement numbers. Therefore, while it is possible to restore an eroded portfolio, the point is that Bristol Bay has remained successful due to its broad portfolio. Every one of its attributes has aided in a successful salmon stock that has shown resilience against adversity that has hindered populations elsewhere. And next will be Talissa to conclude her presentation.
Thank you, Tyler. In conclusion, there are so many factors in the environment that might impact the abundance of Bristol Bay sockeye salmon. These include environmental characteristics, human infrastructure, and future exploitation of the fishery, which should have deleterious impacts on the portfolio effect. The portfolio effect, as we've stated, is the variation of geographic, genetic, and life history of the organism. It proves important to maintaining a stable sockeye salmon population, as shown through the degradation of the Sacramento River. We should work towards a strong portfolio to keep the numbers high and sustainable for the future of this resource. Thank you. Citations.
Now the judges are going to ask the questions.
So other parts of the state have had to put more and more closures on their commercial harvest of sockeye in recent years due likely to climate change. As we see these temperatures increase more in northern regions, so slowly moving up towards Bristol Bay, how would you expect the region to, do you think that due to this portfolio effect, the area would be able to survive this, or do you think that, what kind of shift would you expect to see in populations?
You asked that, you asked if sockeye salmon in Bristol Bay, when faced with climate change, if they would survive
Do you think
with
it's
the.
diverse enough to survive, or how do you think that the population as a whole would change?
I think we think it's diverse enough to survive climate change, and managers at the Department of Fish and Game, it's all relative to the data, and so if it shows that they aren't doing so well, then they will close the fishery. It depends, it can be a specific fishery or the entire fishery, but yeah, the managers at the Department of Fish and Game, they tend to be conservative. They don't like taking risks, so I think the managers at Department of Fish and Game would help with the sustainability of sockeye salmon.
Also, just to add on to that, there might possibly be a dip maybe in sockeye salmon returns just because it would be an increase in temperature. However, they wouldn't, just due to the portfolio effect, they probably wouldn't be as affected by it as maybe somewhere else in Alaska.
Did that answer your question?
So, you talked about the potential anthropogenic impacts on offshore. Is there any on land that could degrade the portfolio? Potentially degrade the portfolio?
people as compared to like California, where they saw a very stark change because of how people were acting in the community. So because of that, there may be an impact, but it might not be as severe.
Yeah, and Bristol Bay is unique to other regions. So a place in California, they might have a severe dip or just a dip in like runoff from factories, but in Bristol Bay, there's less people and there are no factories or any sort of kind of thing that could cause runoff.
Isn't there a major project that's in consideration? So I have to say it's a challenging answer. I know it's a politically charged question, but you guys have to think, those are things you have to think about.
So in our paper, in the research of our paper, we did look at the possible effects of the pebble mine. There's a lot of debate on that topic, obviously, but from our research, we determined that with a strong portfolio and the Alaska Department of Fish and Game's management of that portfolio, there could potentially be some problems with a sustainable population, but hopefully the management will not allow a project like that to succeed.
So your thought is that a project like that could have an impact to the portfolio, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Potentially, yes.
Yep.
Does that answer your question?
Yep.
What do you think is the main driver of these genetically distinct populations of sockeye in Bristol Bay?
So you were asking what makes the Bristol Bay region so unique with genetic variation.
Yeah, what do you think is driving these genetically distinct populations specifically?
So as we mentioned earlier, there are 9 major rivers, and they each have different ecosystems. There may be some similar characteristics, to other rivers around there. However, just the fact that they're all pretty different and diverse, then they can have different genetic advantages just based on where they live and where they return to every year. So that helps kind of play into the portfolio effect of keeping them from dying off quickly if there was an increase in temperature.
Do you think it's geographic isolation then from different populations?
So, yes, for geographic isolation, but also there's about a 2% straying of salmon into different populations, which also increases the genetic